Well, I know. It's back to school time. And we got mixed reactions in the room. And it was kind of like that way for me. I think about back where I grew up in Ohio. We started school the Tuesday after Labor Day. And I remember, I love my summers. I love my summers. Did I say I love my summers? My mother would have to make me come in because I would get out on my bike early in the morning and ride. And I literally twice passed out from heat stroke on my bike. When your face hits a rock, that's not funny. I don't want to feel it. But that's how much I love my summers. And I can remember because there were some friends of ours that were like family to us. That every Sunday, the last Sunday, the Sunday before Labor Day, because also our county fair started the 1st of August and ended on Labor Day. Because it would start turning cool there in Ohio after that. So we would go and do that. And so we would always go to the county fair on the Sunday before Labor Day. And I can remember walking back to the car in the parking lot thinking, I only got one more day before school starts. And how sad I would be, because it's back to school. And so I do for all of you that are going back to school. Michelle is looking at me like, for reminding you. I see Andy back there, But it's indeed our sincere wish that for all of you, that you have a wonderful, wonderful school year. And those of you that are teaching, that are part of administration, and all of that as well, we know you too. We hold you in the highest vibration, in the highest regard, because what you do is so important. And it is really a travesty, I think, that in our culture, in our society, we don't value the education system more than we do. We pay money for many other things, and there's so much that needs to be done. Because ultimately, as I yesterday evening had the privilege to speak to the college student ministry at one of my former churches where I served, that I started years ago, and I had kind of forgotten I started it. And they kept it going all these years, and they called me and said, we're having our annual dinner, and we would love for you to come and speak. And what I said to them last night, I started out by quoting Malcolm X, who said that education is the passport to the future. Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And so, in thinking about that, I thought that, well, since we are talking about going back to school, and it is that time of going back to school, it might be good for Open Heart as well in our exploration that we do every month with our messages and our teaching and all of that, to also, in a sense, go back to school, to look at the basis or the foundation of what it is that we believe, what it is that we teach, what it is that is a part of the very, very fabric of Open Heart and those kinds of things. So that's why I thought I would go this month. And today, I wanted to begin, as I always talk about, that once we look at our faith and our understanding, the place to begin with is God. Our concept and our understanding of God, and how important it is to get that concept and that image in mind and get it in a place where we can explore it and move with it, because it's really, really important. And so often what happens is, while we talk about we are made in the image of God, so often when you listen to people, even listen to us in some cases, we make God in our image rather than being made in the image of God. You ever notice that people who dislike certain other groups of people, their ideas, God also dislikes those people? Yeah. And we make God, it reminds me of a book that my father used to have on his shelf, his bookshelf, years ago. And I saw that one day, remember, it said, your God is too small. Your God is too small. And that's what happens. We make God in our own image, and we make God a small God who has the likes and the dislikes and the prejudices and all of the things that we make God, and we make God too small, because ultimately God is bigger than all of that. And really one of the paradoxes of this is, if we can describe God, that ain't it. That ain't it. Because God is so much more than anything that we can describe. And I like ultimately what Walter Starkey says, that God is not a noun, God is a verb. Because nouns are something that describe a state of consciousness, and ultimately a noun doesn't exist. But God as a verb is not love, God is loving. God as a verb is not omnipresent, but omnipresence. And so when we begin expanding God, I like to say expand God and allow God to become bigger in our lives and begin understanding that, it moves us into the understanding of ourselves, that we are expressions of God. And I know, particularly when we first began Open Heart, there was somebody that kept coming to me all the time. And I said, now, are you saying that we're God? Are we God? Now, if we're God, then why is this happening? Why is that? And I said to them, what we want to help us understand is, when we say that we are God, we are talking about the fact that we are expressions of God, and all that is in God, if you will, is in us. That we are breathed by God, if you will. We are God expressing uniquely and individually in the ways that we do. And so when we say that, that's what we're saying. We're not trying to say that, I'm God and everybody worship me and all of those kinds of things. But we are ultimately talking about going back to the scripture that reminds us that we are made in the image and likeness of God. It made me think about a family that I grew up with. I'm going to call them the Bell family. It's close to their real name. But they were it was a lot of them. And you could see them anywhere you went, because they were, light-skinned black people with red hair and freckles. So you can immediately, pick one of them out. You see somebody across town and you ask them, are you a Bell? And they would say, yeah, because they look like the mother and father. I don't know, the mother and father almost look like brother and sister. One of those things. But they had, the light skin, the freckles, and the red hair. And the thing of it is, as I said, you could look at them and automatically know they were part of that family, that they expressed that part of the family. And the other thing about them, I think there were about 6 or 8 of them, is that they were all gifted athletically. I mean, if you think about the Beale Street Flippers, they don't have anything on them, because that was one of the things they were known for. They would get out there and they would tumble and they would flip and they would do all kinds of things, and they, perform different sports and all of that. And it was a part of, who they were. And so you could see that heritage that flowed through them. And I remember when one of them, decided that, well, they were happy with athletics, but they had an interest in music. And so they started to want to play an instrument, and other people were telling them, but you're a Bell, and y'all don't do music, y'all do sports, y'all do tumbling, y'all do football, y'all do baseball, y'all do basketball and all of that. But they really wanted to flow into music. And so it made me think about, again, how we mimic. Because when I looked at that family, and you could see the resemblance, you could see all of that, how they were made in the image of their parents, and how that passed down. It's what we mean when we talk about being made in the image of God. And in this case, rather than being light-skinned and freckles and red hair, we are many different colors and shapes and sizes and expressions and nationalities and orientations and everything else. But we are all God in expression. We are all God in expression in wonderful ways. And the thing of this is that we say that we are perfect, whole, and complete. Meaning, when we're perfect, whole, and complete, we're talking about at the essence of who we are, there's perfection. And Frederick Bell, who was a very well-known religious science teacher, talked about years ago when there was a part in Germany when they were things that were happening there. They wanted to smuggle some paintings out of Germany into other parts of Europe in order to preserve them. Something that they did was they would get an amateur artist who would use a special kind of paint and would paint a sort of mediocre painting over one of the masterpieces that were there, and so they would let it go because they could automatically look at it and say, well, you know, that's not really worth much, that doesn't really mean anything. And they would take those, you know, inferior looking portraits and paintings and smuggle them out of Germany into other parts of Europe, and then when they got there to that other place, the other location, what they would do is that they had an expert who knew how then to daub the paint in such a way that would take away that inferior paint and reveal the masterpiece once again. And that's what we're talking about. That at the heart of who we are is a masterpiece. Now, there's some inferior or some parts that don't look as well. We think about our lives, we think about the direction of our lives, what's going on, and oftentimes we get caught up in that. We get caught up in what's going on, and we think, well, you know, I hear that I'm supposed to be perfect, whole, and complete, but my life sure doesn't look like it. I'm told that I'm perfect, whole, and complete, and my body doesn't always hold up to that. But all of those things, it doesn't obscure the fact that at the core of who we are is God. And when we talk about perfection, we're not talking about not making mistakes or anything like that, but we're talking about infinite possibility and infinite potential being who we are. And it's important to understand that, because as we begin to understand that and we begin to get a hold of that, we can begin living from that. And living from that is ultimately allowing our lives to be guided by that inner sense of who we are. And as I told the students last night, it reminds me of a jigsaw puzzle. And I know when Shelley was a lot younger, she loved jigsaw puzzles. I mean, you know, we would get jigsaw puzzles, and you know, that would be the entertainment for the afternoon, because we get them out and we work with them. But have you ever just taken one piece of a jigsaw puzzle and said it was a good puzzle or it was a bad puzzle? Anybody ever done that? Why? Because there's not enough information contained in that one piece to tell you what it's going to be like. We need more information. And it's like that in life, that we find ourselves at any moment where we're living, what's happening, what's going on with us is simply one piece in the puzzle of life. It's simply one piece. And we need more information, we need more. And so, you know, when we take that one piece of the jigsaw puzzle and we think, well, maybe it will look here and maybe it will look there. And, you know, we might look at the box and the picture on the box, but we might place it in the middle of the table or over in the corner or something. And it may be that later on, we've got to move it around, because where we thought it fit, it didn't quite fit. And isn't life like that? You know, we have situations and circumstances and things that happen to us in one moment when it's happening. We think this is the worst thing possible I could ever go through. And then when we look back on it later, we understand if it had not been for that moment, if it had not been for that situation, if it had not been for that relationship, if it had not been for that circumstance, if it had not been for that, I wouldn't be where I am today. I can't appreciate it maybe at the moment, but later on I gain appreciation for it. So it's like that. We have that puzzle piece in our hand, and we can get caught up in it and, you know, speculate on it, but ultimately when we place it down there, we begin to trust. And that trust goes back to God. That trust goes back to divine intelligence that is in us, that is a part of us, that is who we are. And when we begin to trust that, when we begin to know that in the midst of all that is happening, that while we can't see the big picture, while we can't see the whole puzzle, the universal intelligence, God, Spirit, whatever it is we choose to say when we talk about God, when we try to describe God, does know what the picture looks like. It does know And when we can learn to trust that, then we can find ourselves in a situation where it does work for us. It does flow. You know, I think about the hymn that they used to sing, you know, I don't worry about tomorrow. There's some things I don't understand. Many things about tomorrow I don't seem to understand, but I know who holds tomorrow. And I know who holds my hand. When we trust in that big God, that all-expansive God, that God is not male or female, that God that is ultimately loving, that God that is ultimately omnipresent, that God that is loving us unconditionally and expressing itself in us each and every day. The pieces of the puzzle make sense. The pieces of the puzzle fall together. The pieces of the puzzle are there, and it works. It works. It works. It works. And so it is.